Hi, Mike. So sorry. I have been traveling.
Oh, don't worry about it at all. I'm just doing a little pivot here.
How are you?
Good. Hold on a second. Yeah, so we started it as a webinar, but I guess the way they want it structured, it's going to be more like a meeting. So I had to convert it into a meeting really quickly and let them know that it was good to join again. So right now we have waiting room enabled, so they won't be able to, like attendees won't be able to come in until we start letting them in.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many slides they have, if any. But I might do something really quick. I don't know. I was pretty sure. Yeah, that's where Melanie is.
Hi, Melanie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
And then Maggie's at Ottawa University now, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, that's the one I sent that email to, because he used to be at Truman.
I think so. She was somewhere else. I can't remember where, but I do remember her being somewhere else.
Okay. I don't know who was that. Okay. Anyways, we're converted to a meeting now, so we'll be able to speak. And then, just in case, I downloaded the registrant list from the webinar in case those didn't follow or come through during the conversion, but it appears that they did, as I saw 89 for the meeting registration. And the links should all work as well. Like it worked for Summer, and so she was able to get in.
Yeah, the link worked for me too. I used the old link I had. So
yeah, we had to do this once before for the I Am Remarkable workshop. Started as a webinar, and then we had to convert it into a meeting. Not 15 minutes before start, but like 2 hours. It still worked. So I figured we could do it again.
No, it's actually great to know that that is an option.
So if we can be flexible, I figure that's good.
That is really good. I appreciate your ability to be flexible, Mike. I realized when we built the registration, we didn't have a ton of information. So like we were like scrambling to try to make sure that we got everything all together for all of these. So
yeah, I'll make sure. Well, so I didn't realize, like I figured out today how to get an attendee report from a meeting, which you can do only from comms or potentially IT's account, since those are the two like root admin accounts.
Okay.
So we'll still be able to populate the Pardot list for this as well. All right, welcome back. Thanks for your patience getting through there. So what I'm gonna do is actually gonna make all of you guys co-hosts. It's not gonna change very much, except that we can limit sharing. And That way it's just a little bit easier to find you guys in particular on the participant list, because you'll have a little co-host by your name there. So you can do
Perfect.
that. And for sharing, it's right now it's set that only the host can share when somebody else is sharing. So like no one will be able to hijack your screen once you start going, basically.
Perfect.
And now that we're in a meeting, we do have some more, I guess, possibilities in terms of like, the meeting capabilities. So we can keep everything in one room, obviously, but if there is a need at any point for breakout rooms, those are now an option. We can still do polls, and obviously interaction is a lot more free than it would have been on the webinars. So people can just speak when they want to, rather than having to wait for me or Summer to unmute them.
Okay. Hey, I see I'm pulling up the upcoming webinars. This is actually really funny. So on July 9th, the Women's Caucus is doing a webinar on Zoom fatigue. Sorry, it's very funny.
Yep. Yeah. It's just kind of funny, especially
It's really funny. I mean,
Zoom
it's
is the
real.
first thing on the thing. That was Laura Remillard from Stanford is the chair of the Women's Caucus right now, and she's been super active, which is great.
That's awesome.
She's been basically organizing at least one event per month since I want to say March, and she's got it all the way through August.
Wow.
So in terms of prep, I'm not exactly sure, the kind of structure you guys wanted. I usually start off with just a brief tech intro right when we start, and rather than having a broadcasted limit, I should pause. Now that's started there, and we'll save the chat log for any resources that are there as well. So without further ado, I want to hand it off to Melanie Gottlieb.
Hi, thanks so much, Mike, and welcome everyone to the very first of our 3 summer series for the Small College Registrar. And it is, I'm pleased to have you with us here today. I'll tell you just a couple of logistical things that we always remind people that we are all at home still at AACRAO working on our home Wi-Fi. So we've had pretty good experiences with that, but occasionally experience a technical blip. So please bear with us. I'm really excited for this particular conversation. I love to see the engagement that happens on the Small College listserv. And I want to give a shout out. I think she's in the participants. I think she's in the audience, to Lisa Fowler, who really was the person who had this idea, got the group organized, and made it happen. And so hooray for Lisa. This particular Small College Registrar series is intended to allow our Small College Registrar folks to have the ability to connect together, since we haven't been able to get together in the last year. I know that the challenges that face small colleges are the same as every other kind of institution, but the flavor and the approach tends to be quite different for a small college, because those of us who work in small colleges, and I used to be a small college registrar, those of us who work in small colleges wear multiple hats and are looking at things in very, very different resource scales. And so I'm really thrilled to have you here. And I am going to turn the mic over to our hosts, Megan Arias and Margaret Heron. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Well, as Mike has said, please be sure to keep yourself muted when you're not speaking, but we encourage you to turn on the camera when you speak if you have the technology and if you feel comfortable, and to remember to unmute yourself to do that as well. But let's go ahead and get started and start talking about COVID and beyond. So first question, let's see how many of us are starting to make plans to be back face-to-face fall 2021. Seeing some hands, some nods. There's a reactions button in the bottom as well. You can. All right. Now, the more difficult question, how are those plans going? Because I know for us, we had almost all of our classes were online. We had some hybrid in there. But I've spent about the last month furiously scrambling to get things converted to on campus, and the classroom situation has been a challenge. So I'd be interested in hearing how people are handling the sudden switch in the opposite direction that we did last year.
So I'll chime in to maybe get some conversation going. I'm seeing some chats pop up, some comments in the chat. Ottawa was back on campus in the fall. So last fall, we opened back up our 2 residential campuses. We brought students back. Both campuses worked closely with the county health departments. So when we needed to quarantine or do anything like that, we were able to do so. We were able to provide food to the kids. We were able to provide the online classes when they were quarantined. And so we obviously are intending to be back on campus again this fall. So I know that our relationships with both the county health departments, being in Kansas, our Kansas campus is in a rural area. And so being in contact with the county health department was huge. So our Surprise, Arizona campus is in a little more of an urban area. So it wasn't quite as big, but our campus is also located on the campus that City Hall, the courts, the fire department, the police department, all of those. And they already have a close relationship with all of those areas. So that's kind of where we are.
I see several in the chat have been back since last August. We started back in August. I started here at Marymount University in September. So I've transitioned during COVID. It was definitely interesting, but the university was on campus hybrid as of fall 20. And it sounds like that's a lot in the chat. Let's see. Sweetbriar saying that the vaccines will be required for students. We are requiring vaccinations for students and faculty staff as well. What are others doing?
Megan and Margaret, this is Liesel. Something's wrong with my camera. I don't know why it won't turn on, but thank you both, first of all, for agreeing to host this. One of the things that we struggled with at Augustine, it's varied dramatically across campus on who's been able to be back in person and not. So our office has been back since last August. We only have 4 in our office, and we've been back with 4 people since October. So we rotated on a 3-person basis until October, but we've been fully back. But our colleagues like in advancement, for instance, and several other departments on campus have not been back, and in many cases not been back at all, or had 1 or 2 staff members there. So one of the challenges we faced was just morale to some extent, with my staff sort of saying like, well, why do I have to be here if I was able to do my job for a year? Almost not there, and why do I have to be here when others don't? They're great and have done their work, but I have struggled a little bit with just trying to explain that, especially when those are decisions that I don't have control of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have definitely seen the same as well. Some offices are heavily staffed already, and others a little less so, and that's everywhere I've worked. I've seen that, especially in the registrar's office, advising sometimes, but those service-focused offices really kind of get left out a lot.
So I see that Carrie Widowson has raised her hand. Carrie, would you like to share?
Sure. So again, I'd like to mirror what Liesl said. Like, this is great that you're doing the coffee breaks, because one thing I missed most about AACRAO the last 2 years was the face-to-face with the small college registered breakout sessions. So thank you, ladies, and AACRAO for doing this. Messiah, last fall, we went back to on-ground classes, and we had limited office coverage throughout campus. So in the registrar's office, it was pretty much the administrative assistant, my administrative assistant, and myself. And that was pretty much all that was in the office every day. And we had limited office coverage, like walk-in hours. We did like a 9 to 1 that we would allow walk-in hours. Otherwise, we needed to make an appointment for a face-to-face or a Zoom or whatever. And the rest of the team worked from home all throughout the academic year. But students were on campus. They also were provided the opportunity to be fully remote. And there really weren't any questions about being fully remote for our students. So that was really interesting last year. Like, if you said you wanted to be fully remote, you were fully remote. So we had hybrid enhanced technology classes with on-ground students and remote students all in the same class, which was really challenging for our faculty. I'm blessed with a phenomenal team. There's 9 others on my team between undergraduate and graduate, and they just really pulled it from home, but they felt disjointed working away from each other. So July 1st, everyone on campus, all offices are to be face-to-face on ground. So it's going to be interesting next week when all offices come back to being face-to-face. Now this fall, our students have to submit an application to be fully remote. And it's being reviewed by a committee to decide whether it's a legitimate need to be fully remote or not. Otherwise, students are going to be expected to be on ground for learning. And we are not requiring vaccines.
Interesting.
So, as many of you did, was all the random testing, the quarantine housing, the daily health checks. That will continue for us this year, I'm sure.
So are you going to do like spacing in the dorms the way a lot of schools did this year?
It's not going to be as drastic as last year, but there will still be spacing, and our classrooms are going from a 6-foot distance to, I think they're trying to keep it 4 feet, but I think some are going to be 3 feet for the spacing in the classrooms. Masks will be required, all that good stuff. So it's still evolving based on CDC guidelines, but that's where we are as a small faith-based institution in Pennsylvania.
I'm curious, listening to how everyone is talking about whether or not we're requiring vaccines. And Megan and I talked about this as we were preparing for the webinar today. There was a recent Supreme Court case where employees of a private hospital in Texas were being required to have the vaccine to return to work, and the Supreme Court upheld the right of that hospital to require that, which I thought was very interesting. And I wonder what are the reactions that you're getting from students and their families about that requirement if you are a school that is requiring vaccines?
Yeah, so we are requiring students and faculty staff. From what I've seen, it's largely been positive. We're based in Arlington, Virginia, fairly liberal area. We did get one email that I'm pretty sure was a blanket blast, all the schools requiring vaccinations. That was very, very negative, but it was not addressed to anybody in particular. It was, "Dear President, why are you doing this?" So don't think that was specific. Don't believe that was one of our actual students.
Interesting.
Got a hand raised. Liesl.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm on, what we developed early on in the pandemic was a committee or task force to address pandemic related issues. And I sit on that task force and meet with them weekly. And one of the things that we're talking about now is just obviously the next phase. And, we really don't know what the end game for this pandemic looks like. So are we all going to need boosters here in, October, in January, in March of next year? Or what does do the other variants mean for us as well? So we're kind of wrestling with several of those things. We haven't made the decision to require vaccines, but we're very close. And our plan is, if we move that direction, is we would have obviously waivers available to a lot of our students. We're not going to be requiring it for employees. But what we're struggling with right now, and I'm curious to see what others from other states are going to do, is that our state regulations still say that if you are unvaccinated, you're to remain 6 feet socially distant and with masks. So we plan to be fully back in class. We will have really no remote options for students. You're either here and in person, or you're not enrolled. And we're struggling with what are we going to do with those students who aren't vaccinated or are reporting that they aren't vaccinated. And I'm sort of shuddering at the thought of putting a scarlet letter row in the back of the classroom where students would go and sit. I mean, it's sort of appalling to me that would be the option, but those that maybe are not thinking through all of these are making those kinds of suggestions. So I'm super curious to know if others are struggling with this and if they have some great other maybe options available that we could think about.
Jay, go ahead. So you're looking for the mute button.
Yeah, my computer crashed this morning and it turns out the BIOS was totally corrupted. So everything's coming back in fits and starts here. We are also requiring students, faculty, and staff to all be vaccinated. However, knowing human nature, we know that this is on an honor system. We're not asking for proof that you've been vaccinated. It's simply a requirement. And we may be whistling in the dark here, but we are working under the assumption that if at least 80% of faculty, staff, students get vaccinated, that idea of herd immunity is going to kick in. And that the idea that we'll have an outbreak based on the current versions of the virus is going to be very unlikely, because there's that big asterisk. You don't really know what's going to come in the fall. And so that's kind of how we're approaching it. Is we're urging everyone to get the virus. We're telling them it's a requirement. However, we're not going to check up behind you. And we will see how all of that works out. We're in rural Virginia, a very conservative part of the state, definitely Megan versus Arlington. Funny thing about it is we've had zero pushback from any of the students or parents, and none that I've heard of from staff, but I would most likely hear from the students.
I just jump in again here too, if that's okay. I don't want to dominate the conversation, but one of the things that we struggled is we did a survey of both our employees and our students this spring, asking either who had been vaccinated, fully vaccinated, or would be at the start of the school year. Our employees were about 60% in late May, which we thought was actually pretty good at that point. Our students were 92%, but we only had a 47% participation. And as we all know with survey bias, those that are likely to fill out the survey are those that are most likely to I know what you want to hear, so I'm going to either tell you what you want to hear, or I'm going to fill out the survey if I've got an answer that complies with what we think the college wants to hear. So what Jay said rings really true at Augie as well, that we really are hoping we'll get to that herd immunity, but we're a little afraid that if that other half of our student body didn't complete the vaccination process, we're not going to be even close.
Vicki, go ahead.
Hi, I work at a small TCM school, traditional Chinese medicine school in Texas, and we are planning to go back on campus for about half of our classes in the fall. And we are not requiring vaccines because we have a significant population of students that would be against vaccinating. But we will be requiring masks. So I'm curious what everybody's input is about masks, because we've heard from some other schools that have tried to do this, that they're getting pushback from people saying they won't even wear a mask. So I'm curious how other people have handled that. And are you, in even the schools that are requiring vaccines or using honor system, are you requiring masks as well?
So for us, the Virginia requirement, the state requirement is you only have to mask if you're vaccinated and not vaccinated. And so that's what our campus is enforcing. With the faculty will not be allowed to require students in their class to wear masks if they're not. If they're choosing not to wear it, the students choose, but students can choose to wear them if they want to, but we can't require anybody.
Right. We're doing the same thing in Kansas and in Arizona.
Got a couple masks for people who are not vaccinated, mask optional in the chat. No masks at Sweetbriar. So really no answer, a little bit of everything. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's interesting. I've been seeing some of the pop-ups about hospitals and cancer centers, cancer places, those kinds of things where you're not getting any pushback to people wearing masks, which is great. That's a very important thing, I think, in those environments. So that's interesting to see. Thank you for sharing that.
I like the PR campaign for masks for flu season. That's a great idea. It's something that people are more used to now. And right, the flu was almost non-existent this past year.
Right.
Vicki, do you have your hand raised the second time, or is it just still up?
I think that's me.
Nope, sorry.
Okay. Deborah.
Deborah has her hand raised. Deborah Greco.
Hi, I'm Deborah Greco. I'm from Dominican University, or Forest, near Chicago. And we are requiring all students to be vaccinated by September 3rd. That's the deadline. And we have a survey that they have to fill out to prove that they've been vaccinated. We haven't gone so far as to release any documentation about whether or not they'll be required to show their cards or anything like that. But we are requiring it for all faculty, staff, and students. They're obviously being considerate of medical and religious accommodations. But other than that, it's required.
So that's an interesting question in the chat. What are the consequences of noncompliance?
You have to find that out.
Yeah. We do have not a rubric, but like a list of of what they're going to do, and it's largely standard student conduct type penalties. They have to do service the first time if they continue to not mask when they're not vaccinated. We're also requiring regular testing for students who are not going to be who choose not to vaccinate, who qualify for the exemptions. And so if they don't do their regular test, or if they're not wearing their mask, they would have kind of standard student conduct type consequences. Any other thoughts around masks or vaccines?
This is coming from kind of a layman here, since I'm not a registrar, work at AACRAO, but is the registrar the individual on campus that's going to be in charge of collecting all this information and enforcing that information?
God, I hope not.
Yeah, right? No, that's a hard no.
That's good.
Yeah, HR is doing it for our faculty and employees, and student health for our students.
Same with us.
Great.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
You
make
see all
sure.
the no's, Mike, coming up in the chat.
That's an excellent question, Mike.
Another question in the chat: how will a classroom instructor know who should be wearing a mask? Are they allowed to question a student? Ours are not. We trust our students, and so if they're not wearing a mask, the faculty have to assume that they are vaccinated. Is anybody else allowing faculty to have more ownership in their classrooms than we are? No, seeing some head shakes. That's interesting. Aaron says they have a badge that people are supposed to show. Green, no mask. Yellow, mask. Red, don't come to campus. We did that for, we did a random testing period and had students who had tested, or no, what was it, after winter break, when people came back to campus and they got tested. Once they tested clear, they got a nice blue wristband, that's our color. And so they were allowed to go be on campus and go to class. Another school using an app to have people check in. I assume the daily check-in. I don't have a fever, I'm not nauseous, that type of thing. Luis?
Can I ask a question? This goes back more maybe to AACRAO, but I would be very interested in seeing a survey breakdown by institutional size or type of what people are going to do. And obviously, I think a lot of us are sort of in the still development stage of what we're going to do. But I know that I'm constantly being asked, well, what are you hearing? What are you hearing on your list? What are other schools doing? What are schools doing in your state? So like, I can imagine myself reaching out to Deborah and saying, what's happening up in Chicago, since we're in Illinois. But I think also just sort of what's happening at other like institutions. One of the things that's been a concern at Augie is that we're kind of waiting for our flagship institutions. So the University of Illinois, in other words, just came out with some guidance, but it wasn't very elaborate. So I would be really interested to see, like maybe later in the summer as things develop, to see if AACRAO would be willing to sponsor a survey of some sort.
So this is probably good fodder for one of our 60-second surveys. We did ask the vaccination question in a survey about a month or so ago. And so I'm going to go see if I can pull that up so that I'll share it with, I'll drop the link in the chat to everybody. But I think we will re-ask the question in the fall, because I think people either they've gone sort of hardline, we know what we're doing, or it's been very kind of squishy the way that everything with COVID has been, because it changes so fast. So absolutely, it's on our list.
It might be worthwhile for AACRAO this coming year to maybe consider a panel, like a session that has a panel of, community, a representative from a community college, a representative from a large, land grant research institution, representative from small privates, that kind of thing. It'd be kind of interesting, I think, to have a session where people of differing backgrounds talked about where they were at that point, because, technically we'd be through the flu season. And if the Delta variant is going to come to the States, they talk about that being in the fall, in October, early November. And so by the time that we attend AACRAO in person, fingers crossed, it might be a good thing to think about a panel like that, where people could come and just see how things were handled. And, I remember doing that when Katrina hit. And there was a panel at AACRAO that was so beneficial, because we all had to go back to our campuses and really start thinking about disaster management. So just a thought.
Yeah, I suspect we are going to be talking about this for a very long time.
Yep.
Because I don't think that, I think that the ripple effect of COVID is going to continue on through the fall into next spring. And I think that it's going to change the way we approach a lot of emergency management kinds of conversations. So yeah, it's definitely on the radar, and I won't be surprised if there are lots of sessions at the annual meeting that attack it from a different angle.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a comment pop up in the chat where somebody was saying, what are some of the positive things that have come out of this? And I'll say, to start a kind of different conversation for my staff, for my team, it was surprising. I had one staff member who was highly immune compromised, so worked from home a lot, and she ended up not feeling as much a part of the team, even though we were all remote, and ultimately took the position at another university that career-wise was a step up for her, and we were thrilled for her, you know. But the rest of us, we became very close. I mean, we're a small office, we're 6 people, but we got very close during that time because, I don't know, you really relied on what people were doing. You had to trust that they were getting their jobs done. And that trust mattered so much to the staff. Like, okay, you know, I'm getting my job done because everything's still moving smoothly. There was, you know, of course, as with everyone, a little hiccup in March when we all went remote. But I don't know, after that, it was a good thing. And I've been seeing a lot of people saying flexibility and scheduling, and that's very true. My assistant registrar has been home the last 3 days working because they had a little plumbing problem because the county came and worked on their pipes, and it's not been pretty. So she has been very grateful to be able to be at home and get her work done and not have to come back on Monday to a mountain of emails, you know. So that's kind of been our experience.
Seeing a lot in the chat around technology, getting 17 forms moved online in 6 weeks that could have taken 5 years.
Yes.
I know we have been more flexible in the way that we accept things. We're not requiring the piece of paper anymore. We're taking it from the student email or the faculty email and processing that way instead of making them hand us a piece of paper. We're still printing out that piece of paper and scanning it into their record and putting it in their file, but it's less work on the student side. And then getting faculty more used to technology. Any technology that people recommend for electronic forms or processing things like that. I'm always looking for good tech recommendations.
Melissa McDowell, I saw your comment about the access to professional development. I would agree with that. It's been great for people to attend the free conferences where in the past, I would not have been able to send my staff to our SIS annual conference, but this year we all got to attend.
All right, I see some tech suggestions. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Interesting one, appreciation of what the support offices do. People appreciating that the registrar's office is assigning and reassigning and then reassigning again those classrooms as the schedules change mid-semester, well after registration. Now I know in my office, we are 3 right now. And so we don't really have a lot of flexibility. that we're going to be able to do. We're front facing, we've got the window, need somebody physically here all the time. What ways are people going to start to help staff adjust coming back to face and keep people motivated, as we may still continue to have hiring freezes in some schools?
So being in the Midwest, any of you that are in colder areas, I think the days of snow days are over, which is kind of a little bit sad, not gonna lie. But I think, those are little perks. It's silly, but it's true. And I think that people might be like, oh, bummer,
Yeah.
work. Because now everybody knows that we can. So, and that we can quickly move a course online and we can do those kinds of things. So I think there may be adjustment to that. My staff came back just fine. They did well. We went through everything everybody else did. Everybody had to have appointments initially. When we came back, you couldn't come on campus unless you had masks, all that stuff. And so I think that gradual move following the CDC guidelines was really good for everybody. But we will miss snow days.
I think Lisa was first.
Oh yeah.
I was just going to say that we spent 4.5 years on a conversion from trimesters to semesters. And so in the fall of 2019, like the biggest worry we had was like, really, was this going to work? Was the new curriculum going to happen? And so after spending 4.5 years doing that and then having to pivot in an emergency situation in about 2 weeks, one advantage, and I know this isn't really how you want to test things with fire, but we as an institution and even as individual offices realized how capable and how nimble we can become, if we have to. And that was really reassuring, especially for those of us that deal with faculty and governance and how slow the wheels of change can turn on a campus. And so it was very reassuring to me that, okay, well, when push comes to shove, everybody's going to do what they need to do and we can move. And so now the thought that we were so worried about semesters that, it took us 4.5 years to worry over it. And we did something in, a couple weeks. It was kind of like hopeful, I guess.
That's super funny, Lisa, because that's exactly the kind of comment I was going to make in terms of the things that we should keep. Because what I saw were records offices and admission offices all over the country, like being really super agile in their decision making. Because you were presented with a situation on Monday, and on Monday, like you had to sort of make a decision. And then that decision would evolve by Wednesday to something completely different. And by Friday, you might do a complete 180 and be doing something completely different. And the thing you were talking about on Monday was irrelevant. Like it wasn't even a thing anymore. And so the ability to be that adaptable and that collaborative across departments and that agile with your decision making was amazing. Especially when you think about how higher ed has this rap of not being able to move quickly and having all decision making being incredibly slow. And so while there was definitely like a stress and mental health cost to agility of that much, because you were doing all of that stuff at the same time that you were dealing with like the personal crisis of being in a pandemic. But at the same time, I think that there's some lessons to be learned with decision making on campus in a way that is student centered, because the students were really at the center of all of those discussions, and you were able to kind of work the problem and come up with the solution across departments. And so I feel like colleges all over the country need a giant round of applause for the work that they did over the past year, and frankly are probably going to continue to do for the next year. Like, this isn't going away. We're still going to be talking about this. It's still going to have an impact. But that's a lesson I would say we need to figure out how to embed that particular kind of decision making and collaboration into the culture of higher education, because that will be for the better of our learners and I think our operations.
Great points, Melanie. I know, certainly frustrating when the decision on Wednesday was the opposite of what you were doing on Monday, but we've all made it through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've seen a couple of comments about commencement in here. Being able to include students who no longer live in the area remotely this year. Nobody was happy about the virtual ones in 2020. I was one of those students in 2020. Finished my doctorate, and I got a picture on a slideshow and that was it. So how did people do commencement this year? Are you looking to do similar to what you've done, including a virtual option in the future for those faraway students? Jeanette?
Hi, yeah, in May of 2020, we did a survey of our students and asked them, do you want a remote ceremony? Because that's all we can do. Or do you want us to wait and just have you back the next year? Originally, actually, we said we would be able to do one in naive us, December of 2020, but of course that didn't happen. But they unanimously said, no, we don't want a remote ceremony. They did not at all. So we didn't do one. And we did an appreciation video where, but again, it wasn't a commencement because it would have been exactly what you just described of, here's your picture, you're graduating, great, that's nice, but it's not a ceremony. So we did a live ceremony outside this spring, and it was so nice to have students back on campus. And it was so nice to have, even a very scaled down ceremony remotely. It was an incredible amount of work to set it up because it wasn't our usual commencement, but it was worth every, ounce of sweat that we put out to put that on. But I thought the best thing that came out of it was that for the first time, we included students who couldn't come back to California remotely. And we actually worked out a way that had them be a part of the ceremony. And their response to it was they actually really felt it was like a commencement, that they felt like they really had participated. We had them on a screen when they were getting their diploma. We had one of our speakers was remote, so his whole speech was, just broadcast. And it turned out really well and really kind of brought the campus back together. And that was a great relief because it kind of will ease us into actually being back on campus in the fall, when I actually have to stop working remotely and have to get up and drive to work again. But yeah. That's it.
Thank you. I'm seeing Aaron say 6 days of ceremonies this year to include 2021 and 2020 grads, 9 ceremonies every 30-ish minutes. That sounds challenging.
Yeah, nine students per ceremony with 4 guests apiece in 2 locations, approximately every 30 minutes on those days. It was a lot, considering we usually do 2 ceremonies a year.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it was good times.
Who organized that? Who does
it? Was a joint group of people from advancement, student affairs, academic affairs in our office, which is technically under academic affairs, to plan the actual ceremony, and then to have things happening afterwards, so that it wasn't just, here's your 9-person ceremony and you're done and leave. It was a legacy walk to incorporate some of those traditions that other students have had in the past, of walking back out our like well-known red doors and having a reception for the alumni office to meet with students after they walked. Yep.
That was quite an undertaking. I'm sure the students greatly appreciated it.
Yes, it was wonderful, but it was definitely a lot more than we're used to.
We did the same as what I'm seeing pop up a lot in the chat. Our Arizona campuses, we have an adult campus in Phoenix and our residential undergraduate in Surprise. They did a recorded ceremony and everyone hated it. Really did not. I mean, did not like it. I will say the students were great. You know, they scheduled photography days at both campuses, hired a professional photographer so people could come get their pictures taken, doing fun things for the slides, you know, whatever. We had some great celebrations in terms of the pictures they submitted. But yeah, it was not a happy occasion doing a recorded ceremony. And we did the same thing for our online unit. And surprisingly, we have quite a few of our online students come to the ceremonies in either state when they're live. And they didn't like it either. The ones that would have like come to in person. And we did in person in Kansas. And we did the 2020 students in the morning and the 21 in the afternoon. We included the graduate students in the 2020 ceremony, which was good because it made it appear more full. But we didn't have a lot of students from 2020 come back, you know. I mean, they're all in graduate school. They've all started their first jobs there. We have a lot of out-of-state students, so I think that was hard. But yeah, the recorded ceremonies did not go over well.
We did 4 ceremonies, one for each college and then one for the returning 2020s. But we did it on campus. And before this, we had always done our ceremonies at a location in DC, which is close, but not actually in any way affiliated with the university. And so we are looking to keep that on campus. They put a lot of effort in. The campus looked beautiful. Students seem to enjoy being on campus and getting to take pictures in front of their, you know, the things on campus that they've seen for however many years. And it worked well for this kind of scale down. We had a lot of people choose not to come. We kept the guests in a different location and streamed it to them in that other location. Not sure how we're going to manage size-wise when we have a higher cap on guests. We only allowed 2 for each graduate, but they are looking to, we're going to do it on campus moving forward somehow, some way. So that was a hopefully positive takeaway from COVID. We'll see. I'll tell you in 2022 if it's positive or not. But just looking through the chat to see if there's any new questions. If there aren't, can I ask a selfish, not entirely COVID question of everyone? We have been heavily involved in graduation ceremony planning in the past. And my argument is that registrars are not event planners. So how many of you all are involved in the actual planning? In the schools that I've worked in the past, ooh, that's too many hands, put it down. I've always worked in places where we had like event people do that, and the registrar's office just gave the list of who's able to attend and things like that. So we've got some hands. I think Vicky was first. Vicky, I can't, there you go.
Oh yeah, I was just, yeah, we are entirely in charge of the whole ceremony, planning it and everything. It's a small school, so yeah, that's really kind of my job and, and with a little bit of help from other people. So it's a big job. Yeah. Somehow, yeah, like you said, became an event planner.
That is not me. Miguel, I think you were next.
Hi, how's everybody doing? I came from an institution. I'm at the academy now since last August, but I came from an institution where it was all hands off. I didn't have to do anything except prepare and make sure the names are right in the commencement book. That was it.
Yep.
But here at the academy, we're in charge of the procession, and we're in charge of a number of lists and reports that go out. Very different, very different. We don't have anything even remotely close to a special events office, which doesn't exist. So, so yeah, it took me back. I mean, we had our ceremony in person. You know, the president comes, and so there's Secret Service, and there's a whole lot of meetings going on that I wasn't prepping for. I thought I had time for other things. But yeah, it was very different being here for the first time.
Thanks. Jay, I think you were next.
Yeah, when I was at Sanford until recently, the registrar's office was in charge of every aspect of commencement from beginning to end. And I will always remember fondly our 2 commencement ceremonies in December, because the university also had a long-term contract with the local ballet company to perform the Nutcracker in our Fine Arts Center. And man, were they fierce. We had to schedule around them, and heaven forbid we try and get in early to suss out what we needed to do for that ceremony, because they didn't want anyone to see the performance ahead of time. And so I will, that's one of my fond memories of Sanford, was dealing with the Nutcracker Ballet. But here at Sweetbriar, I was looking forward to continuing that tradition. And no, sorry, nothing for you guys to do. And we just have to print diplomas, because it's we provide the actual diplomas. Everything has already been processed and ready to go, and that's all we've got to do. So I don't know what I'm going to do with myself in May.
Happy to trade you. You can come here and help us out.
Well, be my pleasure.
Thank you. Tracy? I can't see your picture, so I don't know if you're trying to unmute, but you're still muted. Oh, took your hand down. All right. So we do not provide diplomas at the ceremony. Haven't for a while here. I actually stopped at a previous institution based on student feedback. We had several students throw them away or sit on them, get them dirty afterwards. So they were just, the students said they were a hassle to deal with day of. There was too much else going on. So that was a huge relief. That was always a challenge to get everything ready in advance. So being able to space it out a little bit more and not do it day of was helpful. Right. Seeing some more, we don't do anything with commencement in the chat. Melanie, can we like delete this section of the recordings so nobody knows? I was hoping for fewer registrars involved in that.
No, but now you can take some notes as to who you need to call. Set up a conference call, registrar needing to plan commencement for the first time. Chat. I have a question for Miguel. Miguel, what academy do you work for?
I'm with the United States Coast Guard Academy.
Coast Guard Academy. Okay, cool. I was trying to figure out which branch.
All right, there are a couple of questions in the chat. Do institutions hold diplomas for students that owe a balance? We definitely do. We'll release a transcript if a student's trying to get a job, but the diploma stays until they're paid. Anyone else?
That's super interesting. I'm curious about that you don't release the transcript, but I mean, you do release the transcript and you don't release the diploma. I love that, actually, from a student access and progress. I think that's fantastic. I'm curious how many other folks do that, because from a practice perspective, that's a big change if that's the wave. And actually, I think it's a good one, but I'm just curious about.
We will send transcripts to an employer if someone's needing to, get the job, because we want them to pay off the balance.
Yeah. we don't release to the
Good job.
student. We do the same. It
Yeah,
would go
and
directly
we will also
to.
do it to a graduate school. You know, it's up to this. I mean, the student's going to have trouble with financial aid and all that stuff. So we will do it to a graduate school.
Jay, I think your hand is still up from last time. But if you want to speak, go ahead.
Sorry, no.
Okay.
So that was my other hand. So.
Okay. All right, Jeanette.
We're in the state of California, which means that we are required to release transcripts. We can't hold transcripts for a Mountain Dew, which I love because I love being able to send it out for exactly the reasons you're saying. Students need them frequently to get a job to pay those debts that they owe to us. So I like that, but we do hold the diploma. We do not release the diploma until they're clear by everybody, not just financially.
A mix of responses in the chat. Erin mentioned a letter of graduation confirmation because they won't release the transcript. We do something similar. A lot of times they don't really need the transcript for a job. We also use the clearinghouse and don't block for holds on that. A lot of holding both the diploma and transcript until paid off.
So I noticed a comment in the chat from Jay, and I'll throw it out there because I think it's very interesting. It's now not about commencement. It's, has anyone noticed that staff and faculty dress and act more casually
I saw
on the campus? It's now more business casual, which I'm quite happy about.
Yeah, I am seeing that. I've got jeans on.
Yeah.
We are still, most staff are on campus, not all yet, but we're still primarily doing Zoom meetings. So it's been, I think I mentioned before, I've been here since September. I've only ever been in my building, my office suite. So I don't know what I'm going to do when we go back and they say, okay, meet me in this building for a meeting. I'm not going to know where to go.
We are actually hoping that our larger meetings stay on Zoom because not that it's a waste of time to walk across campus and it certainly eats up a lot of time, especially, you know, when you're at that managerial level and you're going from meeting to meeting. We've been encouraged to hold smaller group meetings. You know, if there are 3 of you, go ahead and meet in person. But right now, most of our meetings are still Zoom.
Yeah, we have 2 campuses. They're not far, but the shuttle only runs every 30 minutes or so. And so if you miss the shuttle, that's difficult to get back to the other campus. And so I think especially for schools with multiple campuses or with large campuses, having that option is going to be really beneficial to make sure the right people are included. Mm-hmm. Melanie?
I was going to say that in terms of using Zoom, there's also something you can think about around leveling the playing field. If you are looking at having a hybrid office working environment at all, you will have anybody working from home. By committing to having your meeting by Zoom first, then everyone is operating and conversing in the same the same playing field. If you have some people who are in an office around a table and you just get someone in on Zoom, it's really hard for them to participate and feel fully heard and engaged in the meeting. And so from just an access and a fairness component, if you're going to be hybrid, you probably should think about your meeting policy. That's what we're going to do moving forward at AACRAO. We'll have a more flexible work from home policy when we are back in the office, which we are not yet. And we'll have all of our group meetings will be scheduled. Like, we have to think remote first, because we will have people who will be remote. We will have more people remote than we used to.
That's a great point. I see a question in the chat about the special grading for the past year. Did anybody after spring 2020, was that when this all started? After spring 2020, did anybody else do some kind of grading consideration for students in the fall or the spring? I will say we did in the fall. We did a kind of condensed one. We allowed first year students defined as less than 30 credits to choose, I think it was 2 classes to be pass fail, whereas the spring one was wide open to any student, as many classes as they wanted, with just restrictions on specific programs that had prerequisites that required grades. But we did not change our transfer policy. In the spring, we opened it wide up. We will accept the P grades for the spring 2020 semester, but we won't accept it for fall 20 or spring 21. Any others do some kind of modification this past year? I see a few in the chat, but not too many in the past year. Several extended deadlines. That's another win that I'm hoping we're going to be able to keep. We extended our withdrawal deadline. It was 12 weeks into the semester, and we moved it to 15, I want to, no, not 15, 14, 13, I don't remember. Time's all blurring together at this point, but we extended it by like 2 weeks. I think it was 10 weeks, and we looked to move it to 12. And so we've done that for the past 2 semesters, and a lot of the leadership is interested in keeping that going. The data is looking like we're having actually fewer withdrawals, giving them more time to work with the faculty to try to get their grade up. Seems to have had a positive effect. So it's another win. It is 3 o'clock. We are scheduled till 3:15, but conversation seems to be dying down. Does anybody have any final burning questions for the last 10 or so minutes? Are you all zoomed out? I'm seeing some chuckles, but nobody raising their hand. Yeah, I saw that, Miguel.
I would just add, if people are starting to wind down, that I don't want to put anything on your plate, Melanie, but if people have questions or things they want to discuss at our next 2, maybe they could start to get those out there. I know we have some topics that are potentially happening, so I don't know if this is a good time to transition to that.
Absolutely. So I thought maybe I would share with you some upcoming stuff as well. But if people have thoughts or suggestions about other things that they want to talk about, definitely let's throw it in the chat, and we'll capture that after the meeting and send that along to Liesl and the groups who have volunteered to host. But we do have a couple that are scheduled in advance. Let me get the cursor on the right place. This is just a promo. Annual meeting in Portland. The session proposal form is open now. So we are accepting submissions right now until August 31st. And so you've got a little bit of time. But also these sessions that are open right now are for in-person presentations. We will have options for virtual presentations and a virtual meeting. Don't ask me what that's going to look like yet, because we don't really know. There's lots of conversation around hybrid meetings. There's no really good solid definition of hybrid. And I will tell you that running people's first idea is running a hybrid meeting of live streaming stuff from the annual meeting. Don't know if that's possible yet, because that actually, from a technical standpoint, is unbelievably expensive. And so we don't know what the virtual meeting will look like. We will do a second call for proposals for virtual. We will probably share some of the stuff that happens in person, but I don't know 100% what it's going to look like yet. So stay tuned. If you haven't checked it out, we have a transfer summit coming up. You may know we used to do our technology and transfer conference in July. It was canceled last year due to COVID. It's always been a small meeting and a really strong population of people who love to go to tech transfer for the networking. It actually, and I would say I agree that it's was always one of the greatest networking opportunities because of the size, I think. And it was very, very focused. So this year, we're doing a transfer summit virtually, July 8th to 9th, really, really focused on actionable things that people can do to improve their transfer program. And it's everything from sort of recruitment, partnerships, policies, and practices that are identified as barriers to transfer students and how to address those. So that's that in July 8th and 9th. Hope to see you there. We have separated out the tech part, and we are doing a tech summit virtually September 29th and 30th. And this is going to focus on the technology of transfer. So we're going to be calling all of the digital transcript vendors who will be joining us. We'll be debuting some new tools to help institutions sort of get over the hump of implementing electronic transfer at their institutions. We're going to do sort of a global survey of all of the best practices. And so it'll be very interesting. Hope to see you there. Our international institutes, if you are an international credentials person, and I know some of the small college registrars have to do that too. We have taken our in-person summer institute and we have turned it into a hybrid event. And when I say hybrid, it's actually a combination of our new self-paced courses plus some virtual training, a couple of hours a day for a week. So you'll do a bunch of pre-work and then you'll get the real deep practice engagement. Participants will earn 6 badges plus an International Institute credential. So that's just something to do if you need a boot camp on that. Our first opportunity to meet in person is AACRAO SEM, November 14th to 17th in Aventura, Florida. So if you are someone who would go to SEM, we hope to see you there. And here are our webinar events that are upcoming. So this is today, the COVID and Beyond. July 7th, we have an update from the Caribbean. The CXC Examinations Council is going to talk about what's been happening for COVID with their testing and results for those learners. On July 9th, the Women's Caucus is going to present a webinar on Zoom fatigue. I see a typo there, so sorry about that. But yeah, we're going to be on Zoom to talk about Zoom fatigue. I actually think it will be a really great conversation. The Women's Caucus has been, much like the small college group, has been organizing themselves and doing a lot of great work. July 26th, we had Ed Siffring and Bill Stanzel, who are going to talk about tips, thoughts, and ideas for the small college registrar. And then on August 4th, Catherine Scovell and Erin Collins, a couple more small college colleagues, have volunteered to host a topic, and they're still in discussion. So you have some opportunity to impact that conversation. if you have thoughts, please put them in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming events. Thank you so much for coming today. It's been really great. And thanks for letting me kind of listen in. Makes me feel like I'm still a little bit connected to the small college registrar community. You guys are near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate the engagement. And if there aren't any other questions, I'll open the mic if anyone has any other questions. And if there aren't, I will see you on the listserv. I'm quite certain. I realize also I didn't introduce myself at the beginning of the webinar. That's really like dorky. So I'm Melanie Gottlieb for the people who don't know me. I'm the interim executive director. It's been a long week. Happy Friday. It looks like everybody's kind of feeling done.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
You too.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Megan. Thanks,
You're welcome.
Margaret.
Same to you. Have a great weekend.
And Summer, if you're there, you can end the webinar now. Or I might have to log out and then log in to end the webinar.
Yeah,
but
I don't seem to
everyone
have
can,
I don't seem to have that ability. So
yeah, but everyone else can feel free to leave whenever. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for presenting or kind of moderating, Megan and Margaret.
Yes,
That went-
thank you.
I think that went well, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice job. Really nice job.
And I had a nice feel of like what it would be like to be in a room with people, you know, just throwing out ideas and like seeing faces of people that I get to interact with on the list. So I thought it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. I think the next one will be even better.
I-
And Liesl, thank you for
all of you at AACRAO.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, we're happy to support. And Liesl, thanks for posting that on the list. That almost doubled the registration.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Yeah, there were probably 77 people registered when I checked right before I logged in. We didn't have that many. We usually get about a 66% show rate, but still, that was good. I thought there were a good number of people.
Yeah, we topped out at somewhere in the mid 50s. So there was 89 registered. So we were in that range, that 60% range.
Yeah.
I did have a couple people reach out individually and just ask if it was going to be recorded. So I'm glad you guys did that. Thank you for that. So any way we can promote that, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the same link, we didn't mention it, but well, actually it's different. So originally this was a webinar. About 15 minutes before we started, we converted it to a meeting. So the same link might not actually work. So I'll just have to, I might just have to post it onto our website.
That's great.
And maybe, Mike, we should convert those other two before they get too many other registrations.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I think this one was pretty easy to do. And the nice thing about waiting until the last second to convert is that we capture automatically all the registrations into Pardot. Sorry for all the back.
Oh, okay. All right.
Otherwise, we have to manually load the list. So waiting, if I converted it at literally the last minute, that would be the most ideal, but probably the last day would let us capture about 90% of that list, which would be nice.
Okay. Well, if you are comfortable, I am comfortable with that. That's great.
Yeah, I'll just make a note. If I'm not running it, like if I know I won't be available, I'll just convert it so that Annetta doesn't have to worry about it. But otherwise, we'll save it to that day of.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.